The Prime Minister Tony Abbott addressing the media there in Melbourne. And with me on AM Agenda this morning, the Liberal Party's Josh Frydenberg and Labor's Ed Husic. Ed Husic, you heard there from the Prime Minister accusing Labor of ripping out more than $1 billion before the election. They're justifying an overall reduction compared to the Gonski amount.
That's just a bald-faced lie. I mean, the $1.2 billion he talked about was accounted for in PFO, and what that was about was there were states that refused to sign on to the Better Schools plan. There is no point in the forward estimates putting in a lazy $1.2 billion if they're not prepared to get on board, while other states did. Other states like New South Wales, who say that the government should stop acting like an opposition and should get on with governing, and we should not have a system where effectively people are ripped off, particularly in my area, Kieran, where schools could have anticipated 1.5 million extra in high-need, low-income areas over the course of the funding term and are now going to be ripped off. And the PM just then suggested that the money will be there. It's not just about the money, it is about the way the money is spent, the way it's directed into areas of need. People have been ripped off by this government that said one thing before the election and are acting differently after it.
Josh Frydenberg, if you take Ed Husic's argument or Tony Abbott's argument, the fact is this was the pre-election fiscal outlook, not the post-election fiscal outlook. So you knew the number before the election, and that's when your commitment was made to be on a unity ticket with Labor. You knew that these were the numbers before.
And as the Prime Minister reiterated there, Kieran, we're absolutely going to stick to our pre-election commitments, which is to spend the amount of money that Labor promised on education. But as the Prime Minister said, we're actually going to spend $230 million more on the jurisdictions which Labor ignored in Queensland and Western Australia, in the Northern Territory. You see, Labor ripped out that $1.2 billion from our schools and from our students and from our teachers. And what is more, they promised that 5 jurisdictions had signed up, but we now find out that Tasmania and Victoria did not finalise agreements and that the Catholic education system did not sign the MOU. So, you know, this was all smoke and mirrors from Labor before the election, and it will be up to us to try to clean up this mess, to try to make you know, a proper system work better for our schools and for our parents and their teachers.
Smoke and mirrors that were totally endorsed by Barry O'Farrell. He's accusing your government of a breach of faith, basically.
Well, there certainly hasn't been that, and as Christopher Pyne has said publicly, his job is not to be the Minister for New South Wales on education. His job is to be the Education Minister for the whole of Australia, and he has to take into account what's best for all jurisdictions. And he wasn't presented with a national model there, Kieran. He was presented with a whole series of individual agreements or promises and different indexation, and it just won't work. So, you know, Christopher Pyne is doing an extremely good job in trying to collate the information to assess where we're at and to therefore put in place a much better system that will deliver better educational outcomes. And the other thing that Christopher Pyne has said is that we've got to focus on getting better teacher training. We've got to get more principal autonomy.
I'm not going to get into that this morning. No. Ed Husic, on that suggestion made by Tony Abbott that it was a shambles, deals not done, agreements not signed, did Labor leave open a window here for this, for the whole, you know, Gonski plan, as it was described before the election, to be changed here, as Mr. Pyne is doing?
No, I mean, what they are doing is they are doing a massive backflip, and they put forward a deceit before the election to suggest that they were on board for better school funding because they knew that the public wanted to see this happen. So what they did is they went out and claimed we're on a unity ticket, you know, we'll say what we mean what we say. And then what they did after the election, when they were in office, is they did what they've on so many levels. Like the NBN, they said they'd honour contracts before and then they changed the terms after. They said the same on infrastructure funding, changed the terms after. Now it's school funding and they're changing the terms. And Josh Frydenberg and the other Liberal MPs who are on here through the day cannot get on with this lie about $1.2 billion being ripped off. You know, we were unable to get deals with Western Australia, Queensland, Northern Territory to sign on to this. $1.2 billion. That's where the $1.2 billion came from, because Conservative state governments, unlike Barry O'Farrell, refused to back their school system with the additional funding That's the 1.2. It wasn't ripped off by Labor. It was Conservative governments dudding their own students.
Josh Frydenberg, are you worried, given the trust issue was such a big one in the last term and capitalised on by the former coalition opposition, that this could come back to haunt you? Because while you're pointing to these numbers and the pre-election fiscal outlook and so on, the language was pretty clear that you were on a unity ticket with Labor, and there's not much unity this morning, as we can see from our debate.
Look, the Labor Party's just clutching at straws here. They found themselves in opposition, and they don't like the fact that Christopher Pyne has to sort out their mess. So I'm very confident, Kieran, that we will deliver much better educational outcomes for the classrooms around Australia.
No, you won't,
and for its
because
students.
you're still stuck with the SES system.
I'm much more confident that we will do a better job than the Labor Party ever could have done and ever did. And, you know, the Australian people will trust us to deliver on that.
No, look,
all right, let's go to Indonesia.
Just let me make one more
talk about
point. Hang on, Kieran.
Just very
When
quickly.
they talk about, basically, Christopher Pyne's been accused of being the only person in the country that thinks the old Howard government model of education funding still works. Damned by Adrian Piccoli out of New South Wales, a LNP minister who says Christopher Pyne's got it wrong and Josh reckons he'll do it right.
Tony Abbott's got it right with a letter to Indonesia. Obviously, it looks like the relationship, the rift, is on its way to being mended, Ed Husic.
Well, we want to see the relationship repaired and enhanced because it's a critical one to the country. Biggest neighbour we want to ensure that on a range of levels, be it from tackling people smugglers through to trade, that we're working together. So anything that moves the relationship forward should be welcomed.
Josh Frydenberg, has the Prime Minister had to give more than our intelligence agencies might be comfortable with in terms of agreeing to share more and engage more on that front?
Look, the Prime Minister has consulted widely with the relevant agencies and that would have been reflected in the letter that he sent to President Yudhoyono, and you heard from Prime Minister Abbott this morning that the relationship with Indonesia is our most important, and that he believes it can get back to the strong, sound footing it was on, particularly during the Howard years. And so I'm very confident that, as Ed says, there are too many mutual interests at play here for Indonesia and Australia to allow the relationship to deteriorate further. These are allegations that go back to 2009. Tony Abbott has adopted a very calm tone, a very serious tone, above partisan politics. He's engaged with this exchange of letters with President Yudhoyono. They have a good personal relationship, and I'm very confident that Indonesia and Australia will continue to work together on those important areas like people smuggling and like counter-terrorism, as well as the incredible people-to-people links that our two countries share.
Has Labor been a bit all over the shop on this, Ed Husic, promising bipartisanship and then yet having the odd dig along the way?
No, I don't think so. I think, as we said, and as the opposition leader Bill Shorten said, we wanted to work extensively with the government to ensure that both sides of politics were united in trying to repair the relationship and ensure that those areas of mutual interest, as Josh described, can be respected and that we can build off that. So I think that's important, but at the same time too, there are decisions that have been made along the way that we've always said we've got concerns with, especially trying to force bad policy ideas on the Indonesians when they weren't willing to accept them, boat buyback being one of them.
We're out of time, gentlemen. Ed Husic and Josh Frydenberg. Have a good Wednesday. Chat to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran. Thanks, Ed.
A quick break. We'll be right back on AIM Agenda.